Hello, this is Daryl Ehrlich with the Billings Gazette, and this is part of our Vietnam Voices series, a project of the Billings Gazette sponsored by Master Lube. And today in our studio, today is September 25th. In studio, I have Carl Wolf. Carl is a veteran of the Navy, and he has agreed to come in and share his Vietnam story and his Vietnam recollections. And I'm just so grateful that you did that. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate you being here. So.
Appreciate the chance to be here, Carol.
Well, it's my honor. Let's start with where you were before you were in the Navy. Where were you, and what was life like before that?
I was in a spot.
Okay.
I was attending college in Northern California, Arcata, California, and make a kind of a long story short, I got noticed to go to San Francisco. You know, greetings, Uncle Sam type thing.
It's always greetings, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, I got out of school long enough to go down there. San Francisco, they test you, the usual physical, are you standing up and alive and all that. And they do some other tests, and somehow I qualified for OCS, Officer Candidate School. They wanted me to go to that school, and it was 18 months. Vietnam was so hot then. They were just trying to get more and more officers. And anyhow, I had to wait 18 months to get into the school before I went to active duty, or then to go to active duty. Well, okay, I didn't feel I had a choice. What I was in the spot about, I was close to finishing a degree in forest management at Humboldt, and I didn't want to quit. I would have been the first person in my age group of my family to go to college. Mm-hmm. It was kind of important. So I went back and I joined the Navy. I joined a lighter-than-air facility.
Okay.
Back then they had blimps, and I don't know if they still have them around.
Right.
But I joined a lighter-than-air facility and was a member of that. I kind of just forgot about the military thing, going to officer candidate school. And it was working fine. I got to get my degree. I transferred from there. I got a job with the United States Forest Service as a forester. And I was transferred down to the Los Angeles area, Santa Ana, with the Forest Service and the Cleveland National Forest, but also went to El Toro Marine Corps Air Base as a Navy transfer, reservist transfer. And I had about less than a year's time with the Forest Service, and it was my dream come true. Always wanted to chop down trees and shoot mountain lions and stuff. That was me. I'm a country boy. I came from out of the desert in Arizona, and anyway, came time, I was called in at El Toro to my Navy base there, to go to OCS. And I had given it a lot of thought. I turned it down.
Okay.
I turned it down. There was an enlisted Navy chief there when I did it. I'll never forget this fella. He had, every 4 years you get a red stripe down your arm. Mm-hmm. His were from here to here. He chewed me out something fierce. He really gave me his thoughts. But I told him that I had a career wait for me. I was not interested in a military career. And I wanted to see what it was like. I knew I would be an upper-level person in the Forest Service, graduate degree, etc. So I thought, let's go see what the regular guys do. So okay. I went in as an enlisted person. I became the first enlisted, not called up. That's supposed to be a distinction. If I'd gone to OCS, I'd have been called up, I guess. Person in my family ever that I'm aware of. So that was supposed to be a big deal. Anyway, from there, they immediately sent me I had to go active. My wife was still trying to get through school, and she did. But I went into boot camp down in the San Diego area. They herded us all together out on a big flat iron field where they march and all that jazz, and counted it off by 80 people to a group. And we had to wait quite a while for them to, whatever they were doing. And they'd call names, and the person would come up and, Joe, you're a squad leader, and pick 20 people and go over there type thing. Anyhow, I was getting a little nervous because I'm not getting called. I didn't know what I was going to do. I did get called. I was made the leader of the whole 80 group. They call him a RCPO, Recruit Chief Petty Officer. That was a surprise. I didn't expect that. But I think I know, looking back, why it happened. I had a degree by then. The other fellows more or less did not. I don't think any of them did. But it turns out there was another reason that was when I was still back at Arcata, when I joined the lighter than air facility, the blimp guys, the Navy had us do tests. And I took the tests, and I aced them, whatever the hell that means. I didn't get them wrong, or I don't know if you could get them right or wrong. I just don't know. Anyway, what they were trying to do was find people that could take more than one billet or more than one position and put them on ships where they would do 2 or 3 jobs and free up 1 or 2 positions to go do something else. And I didn't know, but I was already slated for that kind of thing. So after boot camp, we get out, we did all that kind of stuff. And I was sent to school. The first school I went through was personnelman. And I got out and I finished that, and they sent me, excuse me, I was wrong. I got yeoman was first, personnelman was second, and then legal justice was third. And I topped each of those classes. And that the school people wanted me to stay and teach the next rounds of classes. I didn't really want to do that, but
Right, you're in the military.
But I had actually been assigned to an air attack squadron ATK 95 out of Lemoore, California. And they said, no, we want him here with us. And the manpower shortage thing was really critical as far as working on the aircraft. Our air attack squadron had about a dozen aircraft, and somewhere between 120 and 140 people. That's everybody, the skipper, the pilots, everybody. And if they got me, then I could fill 3 positions, yeoman, personnelman, and legal justice, and actually one other I'll skip over right now. So off I went to Lemoore, and it was great. It was a good bunch of guys.
And what kind of aircraft did you have there?
We had what was called A1H Sky Raiders. A1H Sky Raiders. They were propeller driven, and I was kind of surprised at that. I thought we were all jets now, They were, in some ways, the most valued type of aircraft the Navy had for a couple of reasons. Number one, they were propeller driven. They could load up with bombs, spare gas tanks, rockets, machine guns. I mean, you name it, and they did. I had a picture of one, me standing by one over there. Anyway, load them all up, and they could go fly somewhere and stay up there a long time, many, many hours. If you don't mind, I'll come back to that later, because how we used them in Vietnam.
Sure.
But we went through training at Lemoore, a huge naval air station and all that. One of the interesting things there, I was the head of the administrative unit. We handled all the records. If it was paper, we did it. From Liberty cards to officers' fitness reports, and, it's paper.
Yeah.
We had 22 pilots. The skipper was a commander. The executive officer was a lieutenant commander, and the rest were, well, no, we had the personnel officer was a lieutenant. Let's see. Yeah, he was a lieutenant, and all the rest were 2-year graduate JGs, lieutenant, junior grades. And the rest were, I was called a brown shoe. I was a reservist, but
Okay.
I was active duty, so that was okay. The black shoes, the real Navy guys, were, all the rest of them were aircraft people. The chiefs on down were all mechanics and everything to do with aircraft. We trained, we went down a lot of places and trained. One of the few training missions that stuck in my mind was one day the executive officer said, "Carl, you want to go on a training run?" Why not, you know? It was a T2 trainer, a jet, and two seat. He put me in back. The problem was I'm 6'1". I was 6'1" then, about 200 and a little over pounds probably. And they couldn't find a G-suit to fit me. G-suit is something that helps equalize the pressure when you go to high altitude or high speeds and so on. I didn't really know much about that. Anyhow, they put me in the back seat and we took off. The run was a practice atomic bomb run. And the way they do it, they use a bag of flour. I think it was 25 pounds of flour as a practice bomb. They come in, the target is like here. They come in across, we were in the desert, less than 100 feet off the deck. If you've ever ridden an airplane where all the airways like this, they go so fast your features are just, like that.
Hold tight.
And then they start going fast before they get to the target. If this is the target out here somewhere, they're coming in, they go this way. They don't bomb that way. The aircraft goes that way, and about here it lets go the bomb. And the reason is they want to get out of Dodge before the thing goes off. So they hit the pedal, man, and they go. And I mean, you can't breathe or anything. You just like that. And the guy hit the target we went back over it. There was white flour all over the target. That stuck in my mind. Anyway, from there, the squadron was pulled into San Francisco. We went on board the USS Ranger, CBA 61. It's one of the 4 Forrestal class attack aircraft carriers. And it was unique because at the time it was considered, I believe, the largest, at least the largest warship in the world. But it was unique because the other 3 had angled decks that were made on them. Normally, aircraft went off the front of the aircraft carrier. Ours was built from the bottom up with an angled deck. So the aircraft could be catapulted off that way. Some of the propeller-driven and stuff could go off this way. But it allowed for much more versatile operations. We were the flagship. We went to Hawaii. I saw the USS Arizona sunk there. That stuck in my memory a lot. We weren't there too long. We went to the Philippines, up in Subic Bay, Olongapo, and we did a bit of provisioning and all that. I wasn't much for hitting the beach. I did, and I drank my share of green beer, and the green beer came out the other end just like everybody else.
Right.
But I was interested. I knew I'd never be back, seeing the country. So being in charge of the Liberty cards had a useful
purpose.
So I'd go, and my skipper, this is an anecdote. My commander was an interesting fellow, one of the nicest fellows I ever met, really. He was an officer, too. We were still on ship, on board, and he came to me one evening, and he says, "Carl, I'll make you a deal." By then we knew each other. I mean, you get a relationship, and we were alone. And the deal was this: if I'd keep the paper off his desk, he'd take care of me. I had a rabbi. You got it, boss. I looked in his service record. Darrell, the man, I was 22. The man had been flying in aircraft, longer than I had been alive. All he wanted to do was fly. He got his wish. So anyhow, when I was in the Philippines, I wanted to see the country. I went to Manila. Whoa. Bataan, my wife's uncle was there on the death march. I wanted to see it. I impersonated an officer and went up in the high country. And as a forester, I was curious about the teak they log in that country. One of their biggest problems was theft. They chopped down a teak tree, cut a log illegally. They're illegal. They drag them out of the jungle. And a day'd go by and you couldn't see the jungle, the trail anymore. You couldn't see, you're talking about logs like this. You couldn't see them anymore. I got up there and there was a fellow with me. I wanted to see some of the native people, and we went out to a village. I like to hunt. I still hunt. I run a gunsmith shop.
Right, yeah.
He says, you come. Okay. They have, in the jungle up there, they had cut long ditches in the jungle to attract the wild hogs, the wild boar, to keep them kind of like a deer path, if you will. And they don't have guns or anything. They had spears. And they go, and somebody gets in and causes you can't get through the jungle. It's just like a wall. But they follow these ditches that the people have laid out ahead of time. And they get people in there. Some dude actually got in the thing to make the hogs stop. I always wondered what would happen if some of them just kept going. Anyway, and then everybody jumps out of the side and starts spearing them, and that's their meat source like that. So that was kind of a kick. One anecdote there, I remember one night in Olongapo, which was our Liberty port and all that. It was a Navy base there, but two things stuck in my craw. Well, I guess there's three. There's a lot of monkeys, and the natives would make a box, yay big, and put a hole in it, and stick bananas in it. The monkeys, greedy little beggars, they'd reach in, grab a banana. They wouldn't let go of the banana so they could free themselves to get away. And the natives would come, the Filipinos, and get the monkeys. You walk down the streets of Olongapo, and there's little brazier type things on a stick, monkey meat as far as you can see.
Wow.
I ate a lot of it. It was cooked. I could see that much. But I went to an interior village, and that's kind of a different story. Let me come back to that. I was on shore patrol one night. You're in your dress uniform, and you got your belt and your 45 and all that. We practiced down on the beach, and one of the things that stuck me is we fired the 45 caliber Colt 1911. You could see the bullet go down the beach. I didn't think that was possible. I never forgot that. Now I know why it did it. But anyway, this just blew me away. One night I was on shore patrol in the guard hut at the far end of the village where everybody comes for liberty. You get off the ship, the buses bring you in and all that, and then you go, the girls are waiting, and you take off. I was in there, and I think the officer of the day was the only other guy in there. And some natives show up, and they're just jabbering. We don't, I tried to learn a little bit of Tagalog, but we're not there that long. Anyway, they got a sack, and they come in. They're just really excited, waving around a couple of machetes, this kind of jazz. And they upended the shack, and a human head rolled out. They were hooks. They knew that there was been we put it on them, I guess, a reward for Japanese left on the islands that had never surrendered. And I guess they're still finding some, I don't know, but holy cow, this head rolls across the floor, and you could tell there was some more in the sack in there, and I thought, oh boy.
Wow.
What do you do now? It flustered the OOD, the officer of the day, and they finally got that all settled. But like I said, I checked out the gals and I had my beer and all that. But I wanted to see the country, so I went in one of the more remote villages. Then there's no electricity. I mean, it's a jungle with huts on stilts and that kind of thing. The so-called main part of town, if you call it that, was constructed buildings in this particular place. One was actually it was a kind of a cafe. But I had been in the PX, and when I went ashore, I wanted to explore, so I took pictures. I bought one of those old-time cameras, Polaroids, click, and a film comes out.
Yep.
You remember those?
Yep.
Well, I had some extra film and all that. I went to this village, and I'm looking around, and there's an old gentleman kind of across the street. I took his picture, and some people gathered around, and the old fellow came over, and you know how I used to hold it in about, I think, a minute? The picture would appear? Yeah. It was him. He flipped out. He just, whoa, pretty soon it was, I bet there's 30, 40 people around looking at this picture. So I gave it to him. I became instant celebrity. Unfortunately, what it meant, they took me in this kind of cafe. First time I ever ate lumpia in my life. I love it. It's kind of like an octopus. Anyway, none of us could speak. They couldn't speak English. I had 3 years of Latin, and believe it or not, I taught Latin, and we sort of got along. But anyway, they took me down the road. What was going on was there was a big, it was bigger than this room, a little bit bigger than this room, a wire cage, top, bottom, and everything, with a door, and they brought in cases of a Longifo beer. That was the green beer of the day over there. It was aged, usually up to a whole day. But they stacked it in a kind of a chair to sit on, like fashion, and had me sit there. I'm dressed in dress whites. And I didn't know what was going on. I really didn't. All of a sudden, there were two gates really. A guy comes in going like this with a chicken. And pretty soon another guy comes over here, he comes in with a chicken. The two guys I'm in the middle of a chicken fight. They both had roosters fighting cocks.
Right.
You know what that does when you're in the same place with dress whites?
Yeah.
Oh, what a mess, man. And anyway, enough of that. I left, and I got back to the ship, and I don't know. The Philippines, I got a few memories there. Mostly the digging up of the World War II bombs that we took back to Vietnam. They were still good.
So you dug up World War II bombs and used them again.
Yeah.
It's a recycling program.
Yeah, exactly. It was. And they were still good. Somehow the ordnance people could sort them out, I guess, and so on. I'll tell you a story about one of those later that really bothered me. But anyway, probably enough of that.
So when you left the Philippines, where did you go?
Tonkin Gulf.
Okay, what year approximately was that, do you think?
62 or possibly 3.
Okay, so Vietnam was heating up, but it wasn't the full-fledged war. We had advisors there.
Gotta tell you a story.
Okay.
They parked the ship. Zillions of big brass come aboard. We're all lined up in dress whites, clear across this over 1,000-foot long deck, and they go down pinning a medal on us. We had bombed in Laos. We were bombing in Laos at the Plain of Jars. Incidentally, as a side note, more bombs were dropped there than all of World War II. Hard to believe. Anyway, then, the admiral comes down, pins you, and they go on down the line. Guy about 6, 8 feet comes along, another officer, and he takes the pin off. What's going on? Well, the scuttlebutt finally got around to us. We were not officially at war. Congress had never officially declared war. I was there ahead of the game.
Right.
So they told us, the loudspeaker came on, and they said, you'll get your medals before you go home. We can't officially give them to you yet because they haven't been officially recognized yet. So... you do what you do.
Wow. So you got pinned with the medal, and then taken on. About how long did it take from pinning to unpinning, do you think?
Well, the deck was over 1,000 foot long, roughly 1,050 feet, and we were almost all along the length of it. Larry took some pictures of my ship, if you want. Oh, it had to be something like an hour. I mean, it's a lot of guys.
Yeah, but it just they pin and then come along someone unpin.
It off?
Yeah. Was it just a few minutes that you had it on?
He was not very far behind. It was decorously back a little bit, you know.
Right.
There was roughly 4,000 of us on the ship, and there's a lot of pinning in it.
Right. So did you get it when you did leave? Did you get that medal?
Yeah, it's in there. I didn't realize my wife had kept my medals.
So let's talk about. So you get to the you get off the shore of Vietnam, and then what happened then? What's your duty, and what do you?
We were the flagship. The admiral of the day was on our ship, and one of the things that I've lost the pictures. I guess I can't find them, but they assembled the largest armada that the world has ever seen. I don't remember the number of ships, but I think there was something like 4 jeep carriers and aircraft carriers and battleships and cruisers and destroyers, destroyer escorts, submarines. I mean, America was there. We dispersed and went to different places along the coast. I might point out that everybody thinks of Vietnam as a long, skinny land, which it is. When you go up the Tonkin Gulf, across the bay, if you will, is another long piece of land. It's owned by China. And that's important because we never were sure about our back. They were always threatening, kind of like today, you know, their ships will come within our 10-mile radius type stuff. Twice that I can remember, Russian Bears and bombers, 4-engine bombers would come over. And that, you know, they locked us down, seal you in an 11-layer deck. You worry a little bit about that. It scared the shit out of me, frankly. Anyway, we would go do our things. We were generally not real close to shore with an aircraft carrier until our aircraft had pretty well taken care of any long-range shooting that could come from shore. You don't want to lose an aircraft carrier. We did have one incident, I remember, where the Army Republic of North Vietnam, Pathet Lao, whatever you want to call them, there were a lot of innocent people. A lot of innocent people died over there, their people. They made them get in the junks and sampans. These are small craft sails and stuff like that. And I don't really know how many were in there. I can still see it from the deck, which is way up high. You could look down on the sea coming from land. And there had to be like 40, maybe 50, possibly more. It's a little craft, see? Mm-hmm. The junks are pretty good size, and the sampans are not too small. But we were told they were loaded with torpedoes, some of them. They were torpedoes, and some had limpet mines. All they had to do was come up to the side of the ship and magnets, put the limpet mine on there, and then go home, and it goes off later on. The torpedoes actually blow a hole in the ship if they can get close enough. And best I recall at the time, we used mostly rockets. Well, they were too close to shoot.
Why?
All these little rockets, I can't remember what you call them now. It was like 40 or 50 in a bank, seems like it, when they go, though. It's like a shotgun shell shot all over the place. And, of course, our DEs and the destroyer escort, our small military ships would come in and herd them back. And we usually stood off, I would guess, between 8 and maybe 30 miles, and I could be way off on that. Mainly, we wanted to be close, so our jets, a lot of flying fast and not much fuel, zip, zip, and get home. But if you're too far out, you know, they can't get back. So we went up, I think, basically around Haiphong. The I still hate McCarthy. I better get into that.
McNamara?
Well, Senator McNamara, I didn't know, none of us knew why we were there until one day I ran into an Australian. He said, "Thank you." I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He says, "You guys kept him from coming down the islands through the archipelago to us." And later I ran into some other people, and I don't know if that really was the strategy, whether Johnson knew what he was doing or not. I honestly don't. I don't know if they did. But McNamara was, I used to pin him up. And anyway, we stopped him from coming down. And the people of Indonesia are still, you can't buy a beer down there, they say. Anyway, Hanoi was hands off. They had I think it was 9 mile diameter around it. It might have been a cross, from memory. We weren't allowed to shoot, bomb, fly over, do anything in there. It was sacred. And they'd sit there and you could see the gun carriers where they could, let you know they were safe and they knew it, and because we were stupid and didn't shoot. North of there was Haiphong, getting farther up in the bay, the Gulf. The Armada I talked about was damn it, let's get the show on the road, type thing. You could sense it, all these ships and everything. They had a lot of oil storage tanks and all kinds of stuff. We hit them. We hit them for, I think, either 9 or 10 straight days. And 24 hours. The ships didn't, the airplanes didn't last for another one took off. It's just round the clock, and we're not the only aircraft carrier. The other ships would fire stuff as much as many miles inland and everything. I was in administration, so in a sense I was a support person. Very proud to be the guys that were on the front line. We helped them. Anyway, they got tired. And they couldn't go anymore. So I volunteered. Unloaded bombs and guns and rockets and shit. Killed a lot of people. Most of the time, my role was in what they call a ready room.
Okay.
Each squadron had its own ready room, and I was a talker. And notify people where to go, what to do, communications. And of course, I could hear the pilots when they were near. And when they took off, it was called feet wet, going over the ocean. When they got on land, it was feet dry. And you could hear them, they just say, feet dry. And you could hear them when they tried to dodge the SAM missiles, and everybody over there on the ground, the natives were handed a rifle and said, when they come over, just shoot.
Right.
Some of the pilots had metal plates on their seats, especially the helicopter people, and keep a bullet from going up your butt.
Right.
But they staged the raids. Remember, our squadron was the first to go. They went hour or two ahead of time, propeller driven, put, 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 put. And they're up here in what they call a racetrack pattern, a circle, if you will,
okay.
A long circle. And down below is the enemy, truck park, village, whatever. And then the jets would come in, and they usually tried to keep low and fast to dodge the SAM missiles, and there were a lot of them. You could see sparkles from their cannons in the gun cannons. Anyway, they'd come in, and while everybody's shooting down there, the others would come in, and they'd drop their ordnance or shoot their rockets and that kind of thing, and then get the hell out of town. The stages, sometimes the Skyhawks would go in first, little fast guys, then the bigger Phantoms and whatever, depending on the target. So, and then they would go feet wet. And the carrier had to be set a certain way in order to go into the wind. And the flat top, the carrier was built basically like this with an angled deck. The deck was steam catapulted. It threw the aircraft off the ship. Sometimes they didn't.
Right.
Well, you can hear the jets wind up. That's one reason I lost my hearing. The jets wind up at the highest fever pitch, or they call it military throttles, whatever, so that when the catapult, it's steam driven, throws them off, they also hit the pedal, and they don't want to go in the drink.
Right.
And they actually sink and go like that. It's kind of catching on. But coming home, the aircraft carrier, if it was pointed straight at you, there's what they call the island, a tall superstructure, which is cut on the side. There's 4 arrestor cables, big thick jobs. My bunk was right underneath that.
Wow.
I think that's another reason for this.
So it was loud. How did you ever sleep in that kind of noise?
Oh, you did? Well, I think I lost my hearing. It was weird. The bunks must have been 3 high, and mine was right square under the top deck. And I couldn't get out of the bunk to turn over. I was so big.
Right.
Get out of the bunk to turn over to get back in the bunk. But these arrestor cables, there was a little kind of a lower spot here with an LSO, the landing signal officer. When you come in an aircraft, you lose sight of the horizon. You don't know which way you're pointed. So they have to keep stable or they'll crash.
Right.
And our aircraft had hooks on them. And the jets and the props, the CODs, the carrier on board, all of them did except the helicopter. And they would catch the cable, scream! And of course,
right.
I'm pretty sure, well, that's what the Navy said. That's why I got I got my disability, that and some other things I don't want to go into. Sometimes they'd miss all 4. That's called a bolter, and they would shoot off the end. And if they didn't put the metal to the pedal, they would go in the drink. So they'd have to go around and try again. And, those guys got guts.
Yeah.
I mean, these early 20 guys, a lot of training, a lot of practice. That's one thing America's good at, training and practice. I give them that. It costs money, but it's worth it. Every once in a while, one of the guys would come back, and I lost a friend. He was a Lieutenant JG. I've got his bar. He gave it to me before he died. Come in, and the hook's gone. So they put up a huge net, and it's on resistors. The net's kind of like a volleyball net or a tennis.
Okay.
Net. They actually just get in the net. They trap them in the net.
That's got to be some kind of strength to stop a jet, even if it's slowing.
It is, but these wires have a huge spool in the deck.
Okay.
And I mean, they're like huge, and they're counterbalanced somehow. When the jet pulls the wire, they unwind, of course, and stop the jet. The jets don't weigh that much when you get down to it, and they're slowing down. Some of them can go down as low as some of the aircraft anyhow, down 100 to 90 miles an hour. But mostly they got to go fast to keep the
lift,
stability and everything there. Shoot, I don't know.
So when you're going over, are they running day and night sorties?
Oh yeah.
You're always running, and they were going into North Vietnam, but don't hit Saigon. Or not Saigon, Hanoi. You're
not supposed to hit Hanoi. We didn't. We hit everything else. Early on was, in Laos. We weren't supposed to do that either. But most of the high country, where the Montagnards were, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, I just thought of an anecdote. I was a forester,
right.
Graduated with the skills, whatever that is. One day I got called in for a special assignment. Several times I got, but I don't want to go into that. I got called in for a special, sort of a little team. And because I was a forester, I knew photogrammetry, what do you want to call it? I could see what we call 3D now. In forestry, you have a tree standing up, and you need to count it. You can either go on the ground and measure it, or you can use aerial photographs. With 3D, you can actually see the thing stereoscopically standing up. I can do it without a machine. Most people have to have kind of a pair of eyeglasses looking thing. Anyway, I and some others were, the truck parks were hard to find. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was more than one place, of course.
Right.
From the north, they were bringing down huge numbers of trucks and stuff loaded with armament, getting dry here.
That's okay.
Bombs,
Right.
machine gun, people, stuff, the bad guys stuff. Anyway, they do it at night so we couldn't see them. And in the daytime, they'd hide under trees. That's why the Agent Orange idea was employed. But that wasn't very going on too much when I was there. They couldn't find the trucks and the tankers and so on. So they called us in. What they were doing with us is when you park a truck, you can't see it under a tree, but the engine's still warm. And I was trained in infrared photogrammetry. So we detected the truck parks under the trees using heat, just like we would a bug-killed tree. A dead tree has a different heat source, different look, if you will, than a green tree. And we'd point them out, they'd bomb them, get the coordinates, send the aircraft off in the daytime usually, and they'd bomb them.
So that's how you put a forestry degree to work in the Navy.
Yeah.
In Vietnam.
Yeah.
Was that kind of fun? Because you kind of had those skills, but you were using them in a slightly different application. But was that kind of, did you feel like, okay,
Yeah, it was at the time, they gave me some kind of top secret clearance, but I think it was only because of that stuff.
Right.
We did one thing that was pretty unique, and that was, we're still part of this group. They had a lot of trains coming down from the north. And again, the trains, they didn't hide under they hid under the trees too, but mostly they hid in tunnels in the mountains. And they couldn't catch them. The pilots couldn't catch them. They wouldn't go in the daytime. Occasionally they would, but usually they couldn't catch them because they'd hide out under trees or in tunnels, mostly in tunnels. So I honestly don't remember if it was my idea, whose idea. It was our team, best I can recall. You can't bomb the trains, but using infrared forestry techniques, we saw the heat coming from the trains was coming out the mouths of the tunnels. So we gave those coordinates and they bombed the tunnels shut. They enclosed the trains, both ends of the tunnels. So that was a big help. It didn't really destroy the train, but it couldn't go anywhere until they dug it out. So it was kept stuff from going to the bad guys that were shooting at our guys. So
wow. Did you, when you were on there and you were in the ready room, was that just monitoring what your particular squadron was doing in the air? And
you had different frequencies.
Okay.
You could tell. Like I said, they took off obviously, and they're talking back and forth. We were attack squadron 95, the green lizards.
Right.
Lizard 1 to Lizard 2, that kind of stuff.
Right.
When they went feet dry, they'd say that. They usually shut up after that.
Okay.
You didn't want a lot of chatter going on when you're trying to dodge bullets and stuff. Every once in a while, you'd hear. Top Gun was filmed on the Ranger many years later. But when the pilot says, "Oh shit,"
right?
I heard that a couple times.
Right.
They do everything in their power to get back over water. They didn't want to get down on land.
Right.
It didn't work out for there. If they could get over water, our helo. My squadron would be the first ones there. Protect the pilot. And the helicopters would come, the rescue helicopters. I don't remember, chieftains and whatever. Those guys had guts. They'd go in, maybe the pilot's on an LZ somewhere, a landing zone in the jungle or out in the ocean's going to hell within. This guy had a lot of guts.
Yeah.
Saved a lot of guys.
Yeah. Was it? Now you were over there early. I mean, you're early on in the war.
Right.
I mean, it's not even a war. They can't even pin your medals because it's not a war. But they're doing.
Congress corrected that.
Right.
I am a Vietnam veteran.
Right. But as far as ramping up, what do you know about what's going on in Vietnam? I mean, 1963 is the overthrow of Diem, but it's all a lot of people in America can't find Vietnam on a map. I mean, it's going on, but there's not a lot of knowledge. What did you know, and what did you think at the time about this whole Vietnam thing?
I think like a lot of young people, we went over, somehow we were warriors defending not just America, but almost more importantly, we were defending America from communism. No, we didn't know Pol Pot. Who was he? Laos, where's that? Where's Vietnam for that matter? We pulled into Guam and that's ours, or the Philippines, that's ours.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But no, we didn't know. One of the more upsetting times, supposedly we got sabotaged. We went to Yokosuka in Subic Bay in Japan, and we could not leave the ship. The riots were so bad at the gates, they knew we had nuclear weapons aboard. We had 100 Marines and nuke weapons. But anyway, back to your question. We had maps, being the paper guy, I sure as hell had maps. And a lot of times people would come in, the ready room had maps for the pilots and all that. I don't know if it really dawned on us where we were. It's like, there's Vietnam or North Vietnam, and you turn around and, well, what's that? That's China. It was a surprise. I don't know. We were so busy a lot of times, your mind's going all the time. You go to eat, you can eat 24 hours a day on an aircraft carrier, or do something recreational, whatever. There was TV and, movies, little bitty old TVs and stuff.
Right.
But as far as the country itself, we'd look on the maps and kind of make fun of the names,
Right.
Chu Mai Dong, Nam Cat, whatever.
Right.
The Vietnams were divided into corps, I-Corps and so on. They were just sort of blobs on the map.
Right.
We knew we didn't want to go to Saigon for liberty. Nobody wanted to go there because you were getting bombed in the cafes and restaurants, theaters, whatever. The satchel bombers going by on their little mopeds was very serious at that time. Well, it was later on too. But nobody particularly wanted to go to Saigon.
Did you ever get in? Did you ever land on the
I never set foot itself on South Vietnam.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. What did you when you were over there and you what was an average day for you like on the aircraft carrier?
While we were in operations,
In the Gulf.
well, we closed down. If you're talking about a raid's going on type of thing,
Yeah.
We closed down administration. There's no reason for paperwork while you're out bombing some people.
Right. Well said. Well said.
We had, being in a sense almost instantly surplus. I wanted my group and me to do whatever, to help the guys in the aircraft carrier. Sometimes we just lugged stuff around. We loaded a lot of bombs, rockets, machine guns, stuff like that. In my case, I did aerial photo interpretation, not just the infrared, but other stuff and that kind of thing. We made ourselves useful to the guys that were doing the aircraft. It isn't, 8 o'clock, time to get up. It doesn't. It's a 24-hour thing on an aircraft carrier.
Okay.
You get used to red lights everywhere. You keep your night vision, even up at night on deck, everything is blotted out, so to speak. Not blotted out, but you keep your night vision. Yeah. You're rotated through a variety of things. In my case, when the squadron was going to go in, I was in the ready room. I was the principal talker and helped set up maps, arrange for meteorological weather forecasts, that kind of thing. I guess that's paperwork in a way, but helping the guys with information.
Would these be pilots or would these be commanders?
Pilots.
Yeah, okay.
The
So they'd
pilots.
come in and...
Yeah, each ready room is its own pilot's hideout,
Right.
so to speak. And they'd come in, get ready. They had suits that had boards with different kinds of paperwork on them, like maps and call signals and all that stuff. That was I got a lot of the paperwork for them. You kind of sat and wait till your turn. They couldn't always launch all the aircraft at the same time, of course, so you rotated, and it depended on what they wanted you to do. Sometimes the aircraft, ours included, would just go up to take weather readings or fly with a camera or something like that. Sometimes the guys were sent out two in a squadron. Frankly, I think they were bait. You don't know where they are in the jungle. Fly over, somebody shoots, and mark that spot, and then go get the rest of the guys. So the rest of the squadron shoots them. But you're sort of constantly on alert. You really can't go anywhere because you're on a duty of some form or another.
Right.
You go to eat at times when the break's there, not when you're hungry, but I don't know how else to describe it.
Was it interesting work? Was it exciting?
Oh yeah.
Did you?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I felt I think we all did. We were a member of, well, first of all, we were Americans, which meant something to us. We were a member of a team, and the team was huge. There were something like 4,000 of us aboard, and all these 100 or so different aircraft, and there were Marines and sailors, and it was a hell of a mix. We had our own hospital. You go around. I don't remember any. Well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say I don't remember any disagreements between guys that got out of hand.
Right.
The chiefs in the Navy, sorry officers, but the chiefs run the Navy.
Right.
Chief petty officers. I went up the ranks as quick as you're allowed. You got to be in so many months. You take a test, you pass, you get to the next rank. I went up 5 ranks to petty officer 3rd class. But the chiefs, wear the brown suit. They're the ones that really rule the roost. I mentioned at one of my schools with legal justice. Every once in a while, somebody get in trouble, either on shore or on the ship. And my boss, the commander, he didn't really want to penalize people if there was no real good reason. I don't know how to put it.
Right.
So I would be an investigative team of one, so to speak.
Wow. Was that interesting? So you were kind of like a detective. You weren't an MP, but you were...
I'd go and get the malefactor and sit him in a room somewhere. What the hell happened?
Right.
Often, part of the time there'd be his chief. Everybody worked for a chief. Usually it was enlisted men at lower ranks. The chief knew better. And I'd hear his story. Well, I was ashore and I paid so many. I paid for this whatever in a shop, and the guy cheated me. I bought a suit. You could buy a suit for $8 in the Philippines or in Japan or whatever. When I went to take it out, it was shoddy. I mean, the seams were out. It doesn't matter the reason. Right. And I told the shopkeeper, "Hey, fix it or give me another one." And he pushed it at me, and I pushed him back. Okay, that's a kind of a made-up scenario, but it was sort of that
level. Okay,
the guy lodged a complaint. The shopkeeper, shore patrol, wrote him up. In he comes. The skipper's the report I would turn in is they called it mast, captain's mast. I was the authority, so to speak, on the Uniform Code of Military Justice, what you call in civilian life, the law. Anyway, I'd go through that and see what we could do here, and I didn't like to, and the commander didn't like to see anybody go to the brig if he could help it. We had a brig.
Right.
Guarded by Marines. You did not screw with the Marines, believe me. We already have robots. They're called Marine. I shouldn't have said that.
No.
Anyway, we'd have a mast, a formal process where an officer would represent the accused and blah, blah, blah. Then I kind of represent the boss. And we'd go through it, and he already had my written recommendations. All right, the penalty will be 30 laps around the ship, something like that. Community service, if you will. Right. You'll pick up all the butts on it. You'll do FOD on the deck. FOD means foreign object detail. You walk the entire deck, huge deck, and any tiny little thing that could get in the aircraft, particularly the jet's engines, you pick it up. But you got to spend all day to do it. Things like that to mitigate it. If it was really serious, we had a couple of special courts martials that went further up the line, which I handled. It's kind of like the system here in we call it the world.
Yeah.
You go back to the world. It got elevated.
Yeah. When did you get to go back to the world? And how did that go?
Last night, I don't mean to drag this out.
No, you're not dragging it out at all.
I don't know. I do now because I've got the documents. My wife dug out stuff I didn't know I had in a trunk. I came home and I went to work. I had a family to raise, and
Yeah, because you were married, right?
Right.
So how did you got out in about 64? Did you say?
I think officially, I'm partly blubbery here because I got out early. I got an early out. I was in active 21 months.
Okay.
And the reason was partly because I was a vet, a war vet. I came home. We left the Ranger, and I went to San Francisco. Our squadron was on the USS Enterprise, first nuclear carrier we ever had. And I was on there about maybe 2 months. And Enterprise was doing all the get-ready stuff like we did before we went over. And essentially, I went to the commander and said, you don't really need me. We're in port. I'll go home. He said, I promised to look after you, and he did. He signed off for getting me out early to go back to school. I went on and got some higher degrees. So I was 21 months out of 6 years. And that's one reason why I'm a little confused on dates. But yeah, it was probably 63.
Okay.
It could have been, when I officially walked off the ship, I think it was 63. When I got out, I think it was probably 64.
Okay.
It must have been 63 for active because you have to fill in your Social Security. You don't get Social Security when you're in the military. If you want it, when you go back into the world and you get a civilian job, you have to pay to fill in what you should have put in if you had a civilian job. And that, I know I filled it all the way up to 63, so it must have been late 63 I got home.
Yeah. What did you, were you ready to get out? Were you, was that a good thing getting out?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
I'd done my thing. I'd helped the guys. I felt good about it. There was no real usefulness for me in the short term. And pretty soon I would be out 3 months. I'd be let go anyhow.
Right.
So I made a lot of friends, met a lot of people, got to tour a lot of countries. We pulled in Japan. I toured Japan. I know Japan from where we dropped the bombs to the other end. Been on the Tokyo Tower. A lot of experiences like that, which was great. Time's up. Time to go on. I was already selected as a career professional forester for the United States Forest Service.
Okay.
I just had to get there.
Right. So you got back. Was it hard to make the jump back to civilian life? You're married, you've got a job. That probably helps, but it's still a lot different, isn't it?
My wife and I were jumping around a lot too. She finished school, college, and she's a teacher. I didn't have. I'm going to lie to you.
Great. I at least appreciate the honesty.
It's fairly clear now I had what we called shell shock, PTSD.
Okay.
I didn't share with you some of the things that were most frightening to me. I don't think I can. I'm too emotional right now.
Okay.
But just as a quick guide, when you're in an aircraft carrier or any ship, and they call general quarters, you're under attack, and they take those, you've seen the movies, those giant wheels, and lock them down, and you're inside a steel cage. I don't care if you're on the front line or not, you're scared shitless.
Yeah.
There were events like that. I was involved with another event, which I don't want to go into, but basically I was captured in another country, and I was saved by the British. I got chewed out something fierce by a lieutenant in the British military, but it was worth it. I got out alive. I had what we call PTSD now.
Right.
I don't classify it as a severe case. Frankly, I don't know what a severe case is. A few of the fellows, I'm a service officer for VFW. I help guys get their benefits now, the veterans coming out. So I run across a few guys, and some of them have serious problems, need real serious help. I think I got lucky. I knew I was shook. I knew it was over. It's time to move on. I was sort of lucky because I had a career to walk into. I had a wife, and she was very supportive. I just kind of, actually, I had a very supportive environment to get into. I was also, for 40 years, a wildland firefighter. The excitement of a wildland firefighter, jumping out of aircraft, all that stuff, almost pales the events in Vietnam, believe it or not, for me anyhow.
Huh.
So I had an environment to walk into, and it helped ease me through. Yeah, I had, couldn't sleep. At times, I couldn't sleep at all. I think we probably all had some, I don't know, cold sweats, nightmares, talk in your sleep. Sometimes you sit up suddenly and my wife tells me, you're screaming, you don't know why, you can't remember what you did. You remember events that were frightening and wake up.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things I did was come here.
Yeah. Tell me why. Okay.
I felt guilty partly.
Okay.
I felt guilty. I was alive and I had something to come back to, and I did. I didn't go to the VA till I was 65. I'm 75 now. I didn't want any resources the VA had.
Why?
To be wasted on me instead of the folks going back now.
Yeah.
It got a little rough there for a few years. The VA helped me. The VA saved my life. I believe that.
Yeah.
All the crap that we're going through in America right now, if the goddamn American politicians had funded the VA fully and not up and down, some one year and some another year and not nothing next year, the VA got screwed, and it screwed us as veterans. And I didn't want to take that away from whoever might need it more than me.
Did you find after not going for years? How did you finally convince yourself to go?
I turned 65, and I'm a lifetime member of the disabled veterans here in Billings, but I live out on the edge of the area. I joined the VFW, Warden, Montana, and the American Legion, Custer, Montana. I joined the VFW mainly in Warden because it's a small town, it's not incorporated, it has a VFW hall, and they were about to close it. Everything in the community, from marriages to services to VFW meetings,
Right.
senior citizen, everything happens in that hall. There is no other place out there. And it was about to go on the block because they couldn't afford the cost of keeping it up. It was falling apart. Electricity and all that, heating. I don't know how I found out exactly, but I turned 65 and I basically told myself, I said, it's my turn to give something back. So I went down, there were 3 of us, VFW regular meeting, Veterans of Foreign Wars, or there's a few of us in the American Legion for congressional reasons. They're the ones that decide who goes where, but there were 3 of us. And the guy that was the commander of the post was quitting. That was his last night. He said, you're the new senior vice commander. And you, a fellow named Corey Mordeau, you're the junior commander. He finished the service, very moving. He went, there's a process you go through. American flag, you salute, you do certain things and so on. We remember POWs, MIAs, and all that. It was very moving, even though it was 3 of us. It was very moving. The guy who did it was a senior chief, and a very dedicated American. He was retired, but it impressed me, so I stuck with it. And make a long story short, we saved the hall. It's still there.
Right.
Still needs money. We've got about, I think, somewhere around 50 members now. Most of them are life members, too. We did the same thing at Custer. Their hall is too small. They had to move into the REA in Huntley. Basically, I felt it was time that I can't hear. I put fresh batteries in this thing, and I don't know how I sound to you, but...
You sound just fine to me.
Okay. I get in a meeting. These things have... There's a thing called a smartphone over there, which I probably can't afford, but it's got things in it that allow these things to turn up in different environments, like a restaurant or a meeting or so on. And I could hear. They're marvelous. The Navy's got them so far ahead of the audiology people, the hearing aid people in town. These things are so new. It's just amazing. But they're so new, they're ahead of the people that live, audiologists, I guess they call them. So I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
It's been a hell of a struggle. I joined the post and so on. Like I said, I'm a life member of them, all 3. I was very active in different offices and stuff and public affairs and whatnot. We gave talks to schools and march parades, that stuff. My hearing got worse, and I just couldn't hear. I can hear. I can't, in a group setting, and a lot of veterans are older guys, and they don't talk very well, and many of them can't hear worth a damn.
Right.
So you get in a meeting with a small, now our meetings are 10, 12 people, something like that, and I can't hear. I finally I resigned from my VFW post because I couldn't hear. I did the same thing with the American Legion, and the DAV post here in Billings is just too far away, but it's the same problem. When I went, I couldn't hear. So they didn't want me to leave. And to make a long story short, we compromised For the VFW, I am I went to another school. I'm a post-veterans service officer. As a VSO, I'm a conduit. I find veterans that are out there, don't know where to go, help them find their benefits, link them up with the VA, find them homes, education. I help vets get their benefits, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And I'm a VSO for that post, so I'm still a member. But I don't go to the meetings. I just can't hear them.
Right. What when you went over there? So are those the injuries you sustained? It was just the hearing that was. It's
a little more than that, but
okay.
I'd rather not go there.
Okay, that's fine. What is when you were over there and you talked about getting back to the world, the real world? What did you what did you say you were going to get back to? What was important to you when you were there?
I don't know if you think about it like that.
Okay, how do you think about it?
Firstly, when you stop and think, that means you have to face reality. And the real world wasn't reality. Reality was where we were, what we were doing then. To stop and change the page, change the picture back to the real world. We got a newspaper, I think, called the Stars and Stripes. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been an official military, here's what's going on. Son of a bitch often had black lines all through it so much of what you couldn't read the news. So the world was coming to me, anyhow, through an imperfect set of lenses. We knew about resistor deserters and that sort of thing. Who got elected? We don't know. We knew the first names of the sons of bitches in Congress and in the presidency.
Right.
I think it's, this is going to sound really bad, but my uncle gave me a vacation. I went to Vietnam, and when the vacation was over, it was time to go home and go back to work. Mm-hmm. And I sort of think of it like that, pick up where I left off. Glad to be with my wife again, and glad I had a skill areas to go into.
Yeah.
My career with the U.S. Forest Service was very unique, more so than when I was in the Navy. And that challenge kept me going for a long time. I did things for the United States Forest Service all over the world, and it's just so unique. You walk in and you're on the pedal. Go.
Yeah. Yeah. What was... when you look back on it, how was it for you? Because you got in and you got out early. I mean, you got out of the active duty so that it was that you, and then kind of after you got out, the whole war happened. I mean, it happened for almost another 10 years after you got out. What was it like having been in the early part, but having to sit back and watch this 5 o'clock war unfold?
Well, I think I know what you're looking for. And yeah, it happened to me. When we got back, a lot of the headlines were the crap about us killing babies and innocent people and all that. And we did. My Lai and some of the other things happened. Probably a lot of things we don't even know about yet happened. Mm-hmm. The things that I saw or evidence of that the people we were fighting did was far worse. Not that that justifies it. Yeah, I got spit on. There's an interesting thing. I never put on my uniform again except meetings. Mm-hmm. I never wore one of these caps.
Right.
Until I 10 years ago, I'm 75, 10 years ago, I started up again with the Veterans Post. And many of them Vietnam vets. We got treated like shit when we got back.
Yeah.
And still are in some cases. They said, wear your hat. Let people know you served your country. Let them know that there are veterans out there among them, and what they did, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm uncomfortable when I wear this. I earned it, but I wear it to let people know what we did and what we earned and what we should have in the form of benefits. I don't wear it all the time, but when I do, and I try to go in a restaurant, it's kind of nice. People did some pretty nasty things when I got back in the States when I was in uniform. Nowadays, I go in and a lot of people come up and shake your hand. And that's kind of what I expected from America, not what we got.
Yeah.
It was a real shock.
Yeah.
And somehow we all got painted. I was on a ship. I killed some people with bombs and things, but I got painted with what the folks on the ground did. I can kind of understand that.
What?
You're doing something that's remarkably amazing, and I'm not trying to patronize you. To somebody do this back then, no. To admit you had PTSD, shell shock, whatever, no. I couldn't. I know a lot of people that came back with me had PTSD, shell shock, whatever you want to call it. They weren't quite ready to jump into the job.
Yeah.
And even when they did, they had the nightmares and the crap that went with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't say anything, because the first thing we learned when we got back is you got to go get a job. Now, I had one, but I don't know what would have happened if I'd told the truth. Because the minute, even now, you put PTSD down, you don't get a job. Mm-hmm. They think you're some kind of weirdo Frankenstein or something, going to run around killing everybody.
Right.
The media didn't help.
Nope. I'm part. But tell the truth. Tell it.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in my feelings.
Well, there's a place, and to be fair, I guess I didn't know who to turn to with this kind of stuff. I didn't go to VAT when the worst of it happened, not until later anyhow. Perhaps I was so eager to get back home, I know they had, whatever you call them, going home meetings. They probably told us you have benefits and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know, at that point.
You just want to get out.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Did your wife or family, when you got back, did they notice a change? Did they say anything, or were you just so happy to be back?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I had a long talk last night. I told her for the first time some of the things. When I came back, my hearing was damaged then.
Right.
They noticed that right off. It just got progressively worse, but they noticed I didn't. This is the most talking I've done in a long time.
Yeah.
I was really quiet.
Yeah.
Didn't say much. Had lost weight, and I didn't talk about being in Vietnam. Didn't talk about the military service.
Okay.
My daughter was, I think she was around 30, maybe 35, some years ago.
Right.
And she came to me and she said, this is no joke, "Daddy, what did you do in the war?" Meaning,
yeah.
What was your military time like? I had never told the kids. I have a daughter, Felicia, and a son, Michael, live here in Billings. Actually, they never asked.
Huh.
And I think that's because I never indicated I wanted to say.
To talk about it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's would it have been a good thing or a bad thing? And I haven't asked this question often, but I'm curious because you have such good understanding on it. Would it have been helpful when you got back to have talked, or would have it mattered? Or now I think we're sharing some stories, but I wonder would have that even worked then?
Yeah.
You think?
I think if a BSO or somebody who knew the ropes and knew where to direct you was available, it would have helped a lot. There may have been something. I honestly don't know. When you're a reservist, you go back into a unit, but the unit is different than the one you left.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there that's really been there yet. So you come back in the world and you're with strangers, if you will. There's no reason to talk about it, you know. And frankly, you talk in a different language. When I came home, I had to learn how to talk American again. You know, Tango 4, you're up next.
Right.
What? You know.
Yeah. It doesn't. It's a non sequitur. Yeah.
You know, the people over there are not Oklahomans or Coloradans, they're Gooks.
Yeah.
The language is all different. And you speak in, we don't call them Army of Republic of North Vietnam, they're ARVNs, all kinds of acronyms and stuff. So you have to kind of get back into your own language. But to answer your question, I vehemently agree that if somebody in the kind of role I'm trying to fill, or at least a pass-through, a conduit person that could say, hey, if you know, recruiters are good at talking you in, but not talking you out.
Wow, that is well said.
But yeah, I don't mean an expediter, but a service officer, a guy to help your family get going, find a job, get medical benefits, those kind of things. Yeah, I think it would help.
When you were, let's talk about, there were a lot of intense memories. Were there some good times and some fun times that you remember too? I mean, what's the, give me an idea of fun times. Yeah, absolutely.
I actually jotted some down.
Okay.
I was, you can't arrest me now, it's too late. I did impersonate an officer in the Philippines. I wanted to see their high country.
Okay.
But that's kind of minor. Speaking of an officer, my unit had so many officers, and we had a personnel officer. He was the only graduate of Annapolis, the Naval Academy for Navy people. And the officers would have different responsibilities over enlisted people. The personnel officer was over my office. And he was an asshole. He really pissed everybody off.
What a great guy to have in personnel.
Yeah. But he had the ring, the Annapolis ring, you know, and he pissed off all these fellow pilots too and everything. A fellow that worked for me and I conjured up something called Plan B. And I'm sure there's a lot of Plan Bs out there, but Plan B involved, we developed a set of fake orders for this officer to be, as we were heading for Vietnam, we were either in the Philippines or just leaving. We had him transferred to Guam. And they were fake orders, I admit that. The interesting part is when he got a hold of communications and contacted the commanding officer of our unit and told him what happened, of course, the commander came to me and, what the hell's going on? And it must wasn't my fault.
Right. I don't know how it happened.
And the guy kept petitioning the boss to fly him back. Take one of the planes, I'll get him back. And he didn't do it, which told me a lot. The guy never rejoined our unit.
So you got a guy sent to Guam. You ordered an officer to Guam.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. That's not pretty funny. And that he never was shipped back.
He was not missed. And the unit, no kidding, the unit worked much more effectively. You know, we were one less pilot. They fixed that pretty quick. But there were some unusual. For some reason, we had a ship, a huge ship, over 1,000 feet long, about 4,000 people. They have a head cop. He's called the Chief Master at Arms. For some reason, he liked me. We go ashore in Japan or wherever. I often went with him. Not always, because I liked to visit some places he wasn't interested in. but I think he took me to places like the Ginza and Tokyo Tower, and not the Ginza, but around Japan's more where sailors go to see places. Anyway, he taught me how to eat peanuts with a pair of chopsticks.
Huh.
Now, that's no mean accomplishment.
Right.
When I was in Tokyo, I was alone. I often went to places most of the others didn't. I just wasn't interested in getting bombed out of my mind or having a girl just for that short period of time. I went to Lake Hakone, which is kind of like our Lake Tahoe. I went on their rail trains, high-speed rail trains. I went to Kamakura, which is their actual historic capital. I went to Tokyo, to the Imperial Palace, and saw all that stuff. There are more than 87 billion rickshaws in there, all dedicated to killing any pedestrian. The jeepneys, rickshaws, or what I call it, all over the place. I went to quite a few different Buddhist temples and things of that nature. I saw the cherry trees in bloom. Wow. One thing that does stand out, I'm a bow hunter. I know, I'm 75 years old, and I still like to hunt elk with a bow. And every once in a while, one commits suicide for me. But while I was over there, I was really interested in Japanese archery. And I was going by a place one day, and somehow it indicated it had archery. I don't know what it was that set me off. Anyhow, I went to the door and went inside. And a Japanese gentleman, actually a fellow came in behind me and went on through. And a Japanese gentleman, kind of like a doorman. It was what we'd think of as a church, a temple, if you will, or a place of worship. I should have said that. And I said, somehow we communicated, shoots bows and arrows here, yeah. But it's a holy place, members only type thing, and so on. We were doing a lot of hand signals and some English and the few words of Japanese I knew. The gentleman that came in behind me was wearing a business suit. He went to someplace, and he came back. He was in traditional Japanese samurai costume, I guess I'd call it, the robe type things and all. And he overheard us, and he could speak English. And he intervened, and he says, "You may stay as my guest." And he shot the bow and arrows. The targets were, big stuffed things down there, 50, 60 yards, I don't know, it's a long ways. And I don't know if I could illustrate it and still be in your camera, but it was very ceremonial. And they use cloth-iron shafts. The arrows actually come back past their face and shoot. Hitting the target, he did. He was a good shot. Was not the important thing. Was the mind kind of relaxing, if you will, going through the ceremonial procedure was the important thing.
Huh.
It was kind of like a businessman taking lunch hour and going to the Playboy Club.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I told you about the monkeys in the Philippines. We were in a theater one time in the Philippines at Olongapo. Somebody yelled something, need help. So a bunch of us ran out of the theater, and the jungle was in very close except for the front of the thing. And we all ran around back and down into the jungle. It was probably about, quite a few of us, maybe 30, 40, something.
Okay.
A lot of us, we didn't know exactly what was going on. Somebody's in trouble. What they were in trouble for is, it turns out it was 18 feet long, a python. They'd caught it, and they needed help. The things, they writhe and wriggle and wiggle, and actually they kill you by squeezing you to death. So a bunch of us just grabbed it to hold it in a kind of a long line. I don't know what they did with it. We marched it back past the theater, and they put it someplace. But, big fella.
Wow. So was your time in the military, was your time in the Navy Was it a good experience?
Yeah, the best.
Yes.
I would like to see more young people, not everybody, but get a chance and start in life by having some discipline, having some freedom to think for yourself, things like that. Get an education, get some money. I used the GI Bill when I came back. Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. Another little anecdote, when I was the recruit chief petty officer in boot camp, basic training, there's 80 of us we'd never met before, tall guys to short guys, and I had them broken into squads. You have to learn how to get together. They gave us assignments to do stuff. One of them obviously was march in cadence together, all at the same time.
Right.
Getting 80 people to do that is not easy. But one of the things, we had barracks. The barracks has to be clean, you know. I guess in a sense they were training me too, obviously. Leadership, you know, Squad A, you get the toilets, the latrines. Squad B, you get KP, and, you know, that kind of stuff. I had, there were actually two of them, Cajuns in the unit from Louisiana. And there were two fellows, young fellows obviously, no education, very bewildered. And as things go, one of them in particular kept getting picked on, dummy, you know, stuff like that. One big Northwesterner took a bucket, you know, a regular bucket, and put it on his head, and was beating on it, and, you know, just kind of ridiculing the guy. And as those things go, sometimes there's somebody in the unit that's always trying to test the boss, see what he'll do, also see how much they can get away with, intimidate the rest, etc. So I went over and took the bucket off and put it on his head. And I had the seniority to order it, and it was real order at that point. And he had a little group of friends. I asked his friends if they'd check to see if he was in there, using their fist by pounding on the side of the bucket. And after about 20 minutes, they determined that he was really in there. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you taught him a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it helped a lot. I kind of learned this later more than anything, because why should they obey me? I didn't know what I was doing, and they knew that. Shit, we're all brand new.
Right.
But showing some concern for a weaker member of the group, I'm sure that helped. And then kind of toning the bully down was the right thing to do. I didn't think about all this at that time.
Right, but you
stuff, you know.
Right.
The cadence thing came. I'm sure you've seen movies where they do this, but we did it. You're supposed to all march in unison. We couldn't do it. I swear there were more left feet, and I was one of them. We went extra hours. The guys agreed extra hours out on the gridiron. And we went, when you graduate, there's a whole bunch of different units. We graduated with the little flag they give you for the best cadence.
Wow.
I mean, you know, it's a victory, but it was more a victory that we worked together.
Yeah.
Worked together.
So you really did work. I mean, there was the lessons, and then there were the lessons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And there were the schools I told you about that I took. There were a lot of other schools. On board ship, you literally, if you want to, you're constantly in school. Either you can be apprenticed, if you will, to somebody. I went down in the aircraft bay. There's a whole another deck as big as the one you see on top, but it's in the middle. And I knew I wasn't going to be an aircraft mechanic, but what are you doing? Sometimes you need help. I'd learn stuff. I had to take tests, training and book learning and stuff to get my ranks and ratings to go up and so on like that. I was, part of my responsibility was oversee the mail. You can be very popular when I had a mailman, young fellow that did the mail for us, but it was part of the administrative duties. And I'll never forget him. He was a really nice little kid, little because he wasn't very tall. He was Mexican, Mexican-American, but we hit it off. I could speak Spanish. I think that helped a little bit. We'd kid each other a lot. But he was a ball of fire getting the mail out. If you're ever away from home for a long time, you'll know how important the mail is. And he was always on time, always. He'd work his butt off and have it there. But a lot of he pointed out one time there were a lot of training manuals, journals, both civilian and the other kind. We had a library. You could check out books and stuff like that. We didn't have all the digital stuff you have now. I do recall my grandfather. My parents, on my dad's side, my mother's side, passed away while I was in Vietnam. My mother, she's kind of a character. She sent a cake, and it came. We were in the Gulf, I think, at the time. I opened it. It was a huge, big thing, boxed up and everything. So we open it, and what you do when you get stuff like that, goodies you share with everybody. So I opened the cake, I opened the box, dig in, guys, you know. It was a rum cake, and my mom's kind of a jokester. She loaded that sucker. And, you know, if you hadn't had anything for a long time, we were stumbling around. We were on the ship. You're not supposed to get drunk on board.
Especially my mom did this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this morning, this is going to sound horrible. I was taking a shower this morning, and I realized something about my mom. My mother was in the Army.
Huh.
I have never thought that before this day. I mean, I knew it. I was a bad boy, and, you know, reform school, Okay. And when I finally turned myself into the cops, my dad and my stepmother now, we went to court. I was 14. The judge took me in back because I was 14. My sister wasn't. He says, "Who do you want to go with?" I had a choice because I was 14. I said, "Well, I don't want to go back to reform school. Those guys are mean."
Right.
My mother joined the Army. She was divorced, of course, and pretty much a free spirit. And just like me, she wanted to see the country instead of do all the bad things. And I knew this, and I knew. Anyway, I said, "I'll take my dad." So, okay, he says, the judge. So I was made a ward of the court of my dad in California, and a ward of the court for my mom in the service in Arizona. I don't know if that makes me a military brat or not.
Right.
Not really, I don't think.
That's interesting that you've got that military tie with your mother.
Yeah, but you know, I honest to God never thought about it until this morning.
Huh.
It just didn't dawn on me. She's gone now, but she sent me some kind of award plaque thing she got. It's sitting in my, I've got two offices, one in my gunsmith shop, one in the house. It's on the wall. She was military. And the reason I say that is I'm the first of my generation to graduate from college, be in the military. And I've always kind of remembered things that way.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. What's looking back on Vietnam today? That's more than 50 years ago. How do you look at that now, Carl? How do you see Vietnam now with all these years of experience intervening?
At the time, my fear of not being able to finish college was very high. Once I got past that, going to the service, damn good idea. really good idea. Not just to see the world type stuff, but like I said, learn how to work as a team, get an education, stuff like that. It gave me a few years to, in my day, you graduated from high school, if you did, and you went out and you got a job as a gas jockey. That was pretty much it. If you didn't have a college degree. The service, okay, being honest, I guess you could call it an escape. I got out of high school. I'm standing there on the street with my new diploma or whatever, and what the hell do I do now?
Yeah.
And in the past, mom and dad made the decisions, if you had a mom and dad or big brother, somebody else made the decisions. And now you're on your own, babe. So what do? The prospect of going and meeting a stranger and asking for a job, some of us might get lucky to go to an aunt or uncle who runs a company or something maybe, and the recruiters can be very aggressive.
Yeah.
Another anecdote. By golly, he did do it on me. He did do it. I just realized that too. When I was at Humboldt, it was a state college in California at the time, going to school, I was in the barracks, what do you call it, dorms. Mm-hmm. My roommate was a U.S. Navy recruiter. And it just dawned on me, after I got back from San Francisco, I didn't want to go in the Army, and I didn't want to be an officer, and I didn't want to be a lifer. And I'm rooming with a recruiter. I'm sure that's how I got into the lighter than air facility. I never connected that before. Wow.
When you...
It wasn't bad.
Right. When you... today, one of the reasons we're doing this, and I think one of the reasons you're doing it too, is to make sure that people, when they look back at Vietnam, hear about it from people who were there and experienced it.
Oh.
What do you want them to remember about Vietnam?
Whew. I guess some of the things that pop in my head that, right, wrong, or different, we are America. I mean this. This isn't bullshit. We are America. We are the defenders of democracy. What that means to each person I've become aware of means different things, of course. It means by having what we have in this country, we need to defend it, even though it's in a far-off other countries that we don't even know the language or where it is on the map. Vietnam meant seeing other cultures, learning how other people live. And this is going to sound silly for me, I suppose. Learning to obey your commander-in-chief, but not necessarily trust your government.
Yeah, no, I think that's exact. We've heard variations of that, definitely, of that before.
Vietnam was important. If whoever, and they must have known what they were doing for. We were gun fodder, stopping the communist spread, probably not North Vietnam, but probably China and Russia, from going down the archipelagos to Australia. Mm-hmm. I've read many things later that was one of the major intents anyhow. I could kind of buy that. Mm-hmm. That they were coming for America? Hell no. We're Americans. We got over 600 million guns in this country. Don't mess with us. The Japanese figured that out real quick. So Vietnam was, I think we screwed up there because we didn't pay attention to history. We'd been through Korea, etc., World War I, World War II. We should not be the world's policeman. I don't agree to that. But we shouldn't always rush off to save the world from itself. without some thought. We blew it in Afghanistan. We blew it in Iraq, you know. We didn't understand other people's cultures, religions, and so on, in my opinion, anyhow. The country of South Vietnam and North Vietnam, and in fact, all those Eurasian and other countries operate on the same principle we do: bribery, baksheesh. Yeah, we cover it up, and you know, but we got congressmen every day quitting because they've been bought off, you know, so we're not immune to it. But over there, it's not hidden. It's not, you know, a semblance of moral purity,
Right.
Serving your country and all that. You're paid. You're paid. You paid for everything. And
Yeah.
we saw it. We go ashore and just to change your money into their money.
There's a little something off the top.
Something's off the top.
Yeah.
You know, when I went into Hong Kong, everything there, of course, it was still British at the time, but the Chinese and the British, they were both had their hand out. You know, when I went up Victoria Creek or fought fire on Kowloon and all that, there was always somebody there with their hand out. They have some beautiful things, the Tiger Balm Gardens, the Ginza and all that jazz. But to get it, you got to hold your hand out.
Yeah.
Or have you held out. You know, here we kind of palm it or something. But
There it was pretty out there.
people are, I like to, the word is greed, but I like to think of it more as survivalists all over the world. And we survive by taking care of number one first. It's instinctive. I believe that. Now that we're one of the, I'm not sure we're the last human race on Earth at the moment. They just discovered those Neldonians.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoa. They're not sure they're Homo sapiens.
Right.
It might be a different species, genus. But, you know, we got people that don't like a black president. We all came from the same place out of Southeast Africa, for Christ's sake. You know, stop and think about that. You get in a real fight, you tell somebody that. Did you know we're all...
Right.
Well, how the hell you know that? Well, we got things called DNA now, and blood markers and stuff. There's the proof's there. But our prejudice, which is generally against the other guy, not against ourselves,
Right.
it's out of hand.
Yeah.
And our prejudice leads to making stupid mistakes, thinking other people like us, we're America, we can make anything happen. Forcing Iraqis, and in fact, I'm nervous about Iran. You know, I don't want another Vietnam in Iran. I don't think we'll have it, but I'm nervous.
Yeah, sure.
They got a bigger stick now than they had before.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to, is there anything, I mean, I'm sure, one of the things that's foolish about this setup, I'll just say it, is that I try to condense a whole lot of life experience into a little time. Is there anything that we've talked about that I haven't got from you that you wanted to share, but I didn't ask?
Well, I could ramble a teeny bit. Not just Vietnam. The Veterans Administration, yes, you've found corruption in it and all that. It needs steady funding. Any organization does to be viable. There are 7 million of us, I understand, veterans in this country out of, what are they, 320 million now? 7 million isn't a hell of a lot. What is that, 2% or less of the population? But we're also the ones that got messed up on American people's behalf. I'm okay. I made it. I'm here. I'm talking to you. I'm sane. I got a nice family. Got a few bucks in the bank. Got my own business. Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of them that don't. The homeless thing's not a joke. The PTSD guys that are in real trouble need help. And you can't help but look back where a lot of the, I can't say that word on camera, things that happen.
Right.
What I'll say it, drugs.
Yeah.
Vietnam introduced us to new cultures, and new cultures have things like drugs. It opened the door to drugs, which is obviously a ruination of America in many ways and shapes. And Vietnam taught us a bad lesson, I guess. I never took drugs, but some of my friends and people did. And the euphoria they had for the momentary lapse while the drug was working, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You come back to the world, you come back to life, the world, or whatever, eventually. You have to, or you die. We need to do something about that. I don't know, from a military standpoint, we went to Vietnam to crush them. Oh, them French guys didn't know how to do it. We can do it. We jumped in there, food, pitchfork and everything, you know. We bombed the living shit out of them. Like I said, in Laos, in the Plana Jars, more bombs we dropped than in all of World War II. Think about that.
Yeah.
We sent all our troops in there. Look at all the aircraft. Look at all the money and everything sent in there. Look at all the KIAs, WIAs, MIAs, and whatever. We hit them with a kitchen sink. But we didn't disconnect the plumbing from Washington. It's not that the commander-in-chief should step aside. I don't agree with that. I think the President of the United States should be a civilian and should rule the military. The military has no problem with that. But the Vietnam era is over. It's gone. It should never be repeated. And some of the stupid stuff we've been doing in Iraq and so on should not be repeated. Downsize our military scares the shit out of me, but here's what I think we ought to do. Get more creative, get small, get uniquely armed, specialty units. No more throwing the kitchen sink at them.
Yeah.
We've got specialty units in all branches of the armed forces, from Delta Force to Rangers to, Green Berets and so on. I'm not advocating that. Those are great guys, and I know they're great, keep that. But I think small commando type outfits, I think we should keep the Marines and keep them ready. We will have incursions. We will have small brush wars. We may even have somebody pull something that we need a number of odds on.
Right.
But the kitchen sink approach is no longer any good. It's not. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. Yeah. And we need to have people in there that aren't just military people. We need people in there even ahead of time, if possible, with human intelligence. Humans is one of our shortest. We don't know what's going on in places that we're mad at. Mm-hmm. We don't know what's going on in Syria, I don't think. Yeah. Except the Russians are in there now.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, Carl, because I've kept you talking a long time. I want to thank you for sharing your story and for being willing to do this, because I realize this is an easy thing to do. And I also want to thank you for serving. Thank you for being willing to do what you did.
I appreciate that, Daryl.
Yeah. I really thank you for, and also the deep insight you've provided. I hope people take a good long listen. So this has been Daryl Ehrlich with Carl Wolf on the Vietnam Voices series, a project of the Billings Gazette.